Okay, here we are. Welcome to, I think now, episode 8 of the GigCX Decoded podcast. It's brought to you by Limitless. I'm your host, Chris Dumpleton. I've got the pleasure of leading the sales and marketing ship here at the good ship Limitless. Enough of those references. And today, as always, this is about education. So the purpose of this podcast is to help people that want to know more about GigCX, get more information. And the way that we do that is we bring on people with more brain power and more perspective than me, and I ask them a bunch of questions, and we sort of bring all that together, and then hopefully leave you with something that you can take away from here. So today we've got a real powerhouse. So I'm going to have to be careful because it's our big boss, who's the chairman of Limitless, and it's Mike Havard. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. That's quite a setup. I'm nervous now. But good to be here, and yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, good. And we'll try and make this. You're our chairman, right? So you've obviously got an interest in Limitless, but there's a reason why you're our chairman, and that I think comes from your, the history and everything you've got in this wonderful world of CX. And it's probably fair to say you've been in this industry for a little while. So before we get cracking, well, perhaps you can give us a bit of a Mike Havard history.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, really quickly, started out as a cosmetic research scientist. Loved that, but felt that there was more to do at the commercial and business end of organizations. So then joined BT, spent 9 years in BT, ended up being responsible for their service strategy globally, and then moved into BPO and outsourcing, and then for the last 25 years or so in consulting, as well as being involved in a sort of advisory and non-exec director role for a range of technology companies. So I guess my perspective on the CX industry has been as a client, as a supplier, as an advisor, as an analyst, as a consultant, and now as a chairman of a brilliant business that's involved in it. So all perspectives, and have loved every part of that history.
Well, there we go. That's a whistle stop tour. I think anyone who's in this industry hasn't heard of you probably hasn't been in this industry in the right places, or maybe enough time, because you've been at the front. I mean, going back to when we first met each other, when I was back in the Sabio days, in the systems integration, that sort of stuff, and the consultancy firm you run then, and anybody that was anybody in that world were like, the consultancy firm that you own and ran, Ember, was the one. That was who people referred to go in and figure out what transformations or what they could do to transform, and through you guys and the business you built up was who everybody went to. So with all of that experience, that's why hopefully this conversation is good, because you, like you said, this comes from your experience firsthand at advising, but also supplying and being around all the various sort of technologies out there. And there are thousands of different pieces of technology out there, from forums to chatbots to virtual assistants and all this sort of stuff, all kind of gunning for the same sort of thing. And as you hopefully will testify as well, we get into it, that what we're doing is something a bit different to all of that. But anyway, that enough of that part. So I've got a bunch of questions. We're going to go through them and just see if get your perspectives on the world. So the first one is, in your humble opinion, what do you think are the big things that are affecting the customer experience and customer service industry as we speak in the middle of October?
Yeah, interesting question. I suspect there are some common themes for a lot of firms out there, whether you're operating at a global scale, like the Microsofts of this world, or you're down as a small entity trying to do good in a regional part of the UK. Wherever it is, I think the big issue that I have heard through the clients that I talk to in the organizations that I have worked with over the years is volume is a big issue. A lot of people were talking about the decline in the demand for service because of the role of technology and the role of better process and the role of designers designing out the need for customers to need to talk to organizations as much. And we're just not seeing that. We're just seeing not necessarily an increase in the volume overall, but certainly an increase in the workload. And the difference between the two is clearly volume is the number of interactions that customers are wanting, and the workload is sort of essentially the amount of resource that's necessary to manage it. So we're seeing that intensity and complexity increasing, which is placing demand on the resources of organizations. And so that has the consequence of creating the second issue, which is really one about staffing and resourcing and getting the right people and good people to answer increasingly complex customer queries. And, you know, whether you're looking across private sector, government sector, you know, the increase in workload is what is really vexing organizations at a time that they are cost constrained and needing to find additional efficiencies. It's just getting harder for these organizations, and you know, there's only a few things that can give, really. One is you can try and take the volume, the workload out of your business, and clearly that's the right and good thing to do. What are the root causes? How do you create better design for customer journeys? How do you eliminate the need for that contact in the first place? But then beyond that, it's really about throwing more resources at the issue, or it's about letting the service levels and therefore the customer suffer just a bit. And that's what I guess I loved about Limitless, is that it's found a way to navigate between those two and solves a lot of other issues as well. But not getting into Limitless just yet, I think those industry issues of workload, skilled resourcing, and cost pressures are really what I find most organizations are struggling with right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly what we, it is the common theme. There's no, you know, major surprise, I would guess, in all of that. I think the biggest one that seems to be coming through is that balance between access to talent, as it's called, you know, access to the staffing itself, but also not just the generic form, but those that can offer something that allows the brand to differentiate in a world where it's so hard and loyalty is becoming more liquid, as it's possible for more customers to change who they're buying from, who their relationships from, much more easily. You know, you see it with everything. You used to buy a contract for something, and that was you, whether you liked it or not, for 12 months. Whereas now, everyone's in this switching mentality where you can move around, and there's only so far you can go with costs. So the other next thing is, well, what's my customer experience like? And then, where does my customer experience team, what can they deliver to help me differentiate, or at least keep a certain level of quality? And then, you know, kind of goes on from there. So leads on to the next part of the question, which is, how do you see in that world where all those challenges around cost and staffing, how do you see GigCX playing not just a role in that, but, you know, do you think it's a major role? Do you think it's something on the side? How do you see it from your perspective?
Yeah, I see it's playing a major role, Chris, and clearly it's a new category. It's a new type of solution. It's been around in various forms for a number of years, but not in the way that Limitless delivers, you know, which is a dedicated platform specific to solving this issue of how you connect customers with other customers to help them solve problems and issues within the organization. The reason that I think it plays a potentially huge part in the future is just because it will also help organizations to understand the value of that customer contact. And there's several dimensions to that, which I think are really important, that have perhaps not been considered enough in the past. The first is, if you really understood customer value, organizations wouldn't be putting them through the pain that they so frequently are, right? And, you know, and I've got a lot of very recent pain in this, in terms of dealing with utilities, dealing with airlines, dealing with other travel company. You know, it's just painful, time and time again, and it's because they're having to focus on this volume and cost issue rather than thinking about the value issue. And, you know, I mean, to use that analogy of, you know, have you seen the cost of training? Well, you should see the cost of not training, right? It's about understanding value rather than cost, which is where I think organizations are getting to and need to do more of. The second thing is that perspective on value has only ever been largely, if it was there, one-dimensional, i.e. it's been an operational, in the service world, question of value. And so, what is this customer, by dealing with them well, not going to cost us in the future? How might they be a more loyal customer? How might they be less demanding in the future? Type perspective on value. I think what Limitless offers, and the idea of connecting brand advocates with customers who've got a question, is that you're driving a much bigger question of value around brand value, and the idea of brand advocacy, and the idea of creating in a sense, a virtuous, prosperous circle of customers, helping customers, getting rewarded for it, feeling good about it, feeling good about the brand, wanting to do more of it, and this idea that you can trust other customers when they're giving you advice, perhaps more so than you might want to trust an internal agent. Certainly in terms of the skill sets that are often there that you can tap into with customers and their knowledge of products, particularly, as I've said, in the world where customer service is generally resource constrained and skill constrained. What we have in Limitless is literally a limitless supply of passionate, knowledgeable experts who are brand advocates for your brand. So I think that's the power of it. So it's not so much about all of these operational benefits, which are definitely there, but for me, the real excitement and why it should be playing a much bigger part in an organization's plans and agenda is that question of value. And if you really want to get into that, then I suspect you and your team, Chris, can have some really interesting discussions with organizations about that role of value and what Limitless offers.
Do you think there's I think you said two things there, if I heard right. One was the operational benefits are there. So your classic KPIs around performance and CSAT and feedback and all that wonderful stuff, which drives the modern day contact center. But what I also heard was about trust, which is that, and about customer value. What one's a lot easier to measure I'm looking at my screen today or my wallboard today than the other. So where's my question going for this? Where do you think people should be focused, and can you measure that sort of thing? And if so, how would you advise a company to prioritize that part versus the daily operational grind?
Yeah, so yes, it can be measured. I think there's a whole range of measures, or particularly around brand advocacy and lifetime value and retention and those measures. What I would urge the people who are looking at this session to go and do is talk to parts of the organization that they wouldn't perhaps historically have had that closer relationship to. So get the service part talking to marketing and talking to the brand guys, and talking to the digital guys and talking to the community guys, and getting together and saying, what are your measures? What are the measures in our community team? What are the measures in our brand team? And how can we bring those together with what we've got in our operational area, and see if we can create a set of measures through what we do with an organization like Limitless to bring all of those together. I think that's the real power of this, is that we can cut across silos. Now, that make it hard work sometimes for organizations to get their head around that and go and have conversations that they wouldn't naturally have. But the opportunity to use the thousands, tens of thousands, millions of conversations that you might be having out there to influence and impact parts of the organization that may not even know or see the value of that going on, I think is incredible. And get those conversations going and create a new set of KPIs so that you've got a much broader organizational buy-in to what's going on. This isn't just an operational service. It absolutely works at that level, but that's missing a much bigger opportunity.
So do you think it should be driven then by other departments as much as it is often where it all ends up, which is in the operational play? But you mentioned there are other departments, you're interested in your take on communities and that not being part of the contact center or the service center part, but also you mentioned digital, you mentioned marketing. So where do you think this should be driven from as initial idea?
I think it's wherever that's right for the organization, and I don't think that's for us to prescribe necessarily. I mean, it's where they have the champion, where they see the potential. My point is, let's not keep it in one silo. Let's help the organization, bring the value to a wider set of departments, set of activities within the organization. I mean, a question back to you, Chris. I mean, I guess you have conversations with digital guys, with operations guys, community guys, with marketing guys. So I guess you're having a broad range of discussions with various stakeholders, day to day, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. And actually, this leads on to another question I have for you, which was to do with actually something to do with the perception. So, in a couple of our dealings, we've traditionally been talking to the operational leaders, and the whole solution has been about how we can provide them with a new resource pool made up of their customers, and they can deliver all the same operational KPIs, and we can improve them and deliver them a better cost to serve. Brilliant, great stuff. And I say the best way to do that is that we onboard your customers. And the best way that we can onboard your customers is if you help with that onboarding process, that invitation or that awareness that there is this sort of program. And that's where we can have problems, because then there is the need to bring in the marketing function who own the customer data to help with the profiling and personas and who are the archetypal customer that we want to go after to bring onto this program, because we can end up in that silo, as you mentioned, which is just about providing a resource. So it's interesting your perspective on that, in that if we if you said to I'm going to massively paraphrase lots of organizations and what their objectives are now, but bear with me as I do this. But you say to a marketing company, and what's your objective is, you want to reach as many customers as you've got, those that are with you to buy more, those that are with you that are thinking of leaving to stay, and those that haven't yet bought from you to come and buy. And the way you do that is through a multitude of different things. It could be the signs on a bus, it could be billboards, it could be TV ads going there. It's very hard sometimes to correlate those direct pieces of marketing with one of those three things, as in bringing on new customers, keeping you, or getting your current ones, because marketing sometimes can be this big cloud you fire arrows into, and then at some point you hope it comes back in the front door somewhere. But actually joining the dots is pretty difficult, right? So when you say, well, here is a way you can use your own customers have already decided to buy from you, and now we want to offer them another way to have a relationship with your brand that means that they're going to have a revenue source from you as well as buying your products.
Yeah.
In a world where loyalty has become more liquid, it means they're more likely to stay with you, because now they've got that revenue source. And then you get this halo effect, which is then they are not only, I've bought these headphones, or I've bought that game station, or I've bought this electronic device or software, or whatever the product is, but I'm now also a brand expert for them. What we see is that in our expert community, they're proud of that. A lot of them put it on their profiles, right? I'm a Microsoft expert, or I'm a PlayStation expert, whatever it might be, and they're proud to wear it as a badge. It's a badge of honor for them. So you've got a direct connection then to the marketing team, and then the other one you mentioned was about communities. And the thing with communities is that you've got all the great parts around humans wanting to help humans, right? They are coming onto a digital platform, number one. Number two, they are offering their time when it's convenient for them. And number three, they are have product knowledge. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. The issues are that it's not often a channel that you can rely on in a service operation to deliver your metrics back, or have nobody's financially rewarded, so you lose that missing piece. So that's kind of what GigCX is tapping into the marketing side, because it's giving you a direct way of putting your customers behind your customer service operation. That's got to be good for loyalty and lifetime value. You take all the benefits of what people are really used to in the community world, but you're adding financial rewards to people, and you're also managing it in a traditional contact center vibe. So you get all your performance metrics as well, but you're just tapping into that the stuff that's already there. This is for me, this is just like you're just sort of guiding the horse to the water a bit with GigCX, because most of these things are already there. The human psychology is there. People want to help people, it's already there. Digital engagement is already there. Product knowledge is already there. The customer's already there. You're just bringing them into a world. But I think the biggest thing that what you mentioned in all of that is that you're doing it with the marketing teams, with the digital teams, with the community teams, as well as those guys that are in the, that are constantly catching all of the demand and trying to deal with it in the most cost efficient manner and with the highest CSAT as they can. And you bring them all on that journey, and that should tick most people's boxes, or certainly the vast majority of them.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not sure if there was a question in that anywhere, but just to respond to it though, I think that the magic sauce for me is the passion that you should be tapping into with your customers, right? And if you've got a long-term customer who knows your product inside out, is prepared to help others navigate that product, whatever it is, whether, as you say, it's an application, a software program, a game, an online game, or a consumer electronic, whatever it is, they've got a passion, they've got a knowledge, they've got an expertise about it, and you are incentivizing them to be even more of an advocate than they are. That's just an incredible combination of values that the marketing department and the community and the digital and the operations guys should be benefiting from together. And I think that passion is at the heart, I think, of Limitless. And then there is another component that is at the heart of what we do, and that's trust. And the way I like to think about that is how TripAdvisor has grown on this basis of, if I want to know about something, I'll talk to people who've used the product, have been there, flown on the airline, or been to the hotel, or been to the attraction, and know it well. And I can sort of trust in the crowd more than I can trust in the hotel themselves, right? The hotel will give the spin, but I can trust in the crowd. And so what you get with Limitless is that trust in the crowd, the passion of an advocate, and the expertise of a user. And I think that's such a powerful combination. And you combine it with what I mentioned earlier, that organizations are struggling to recruit and provide the necessary resource, right? Where would you rather go? Would you rather go to a lifelong product advocate, or to somebody that's been recruited in desperation and has had 3 days training before they're talking to your valued customers? I know where I would rather go, and that's why I was delighted to get involved in the business.
There you go. You just reminded me of a stupid mistake I did, which was I didn't go on to TripAdvisor before I bought my son's remote control car for his birthday. Had I done that, I would have got a much more honest review of the products and all that. But anyway, that was a big segue. But on the website, that was the spin. That was the hotel equivalent. Website are great. Obviously, the reviews that are on the website are brilliant. Well, why wouldn't it be? But then you actually talk to TripAdvisor. Hang on, this thing was rubbish. It didn't charge. Didn't work. It fell apart. Okay, right. There's the honesty, which is what I think everyone wants. Right, I've got another question for you. This is potentially controversial, but I'd always love your opinion on this one. Is that especially as we've just seen in the last couple of days, actually, there's a proposed change in the US to do with the classification of freelancers. So the headline around this is that organizations are going to become under more pressure to classify anything in the independent contractor freelancer status correctly, because there can be misclassification goes on there, and all this is doing and has done is adds a bit more sort of mystery to this definition of gig and what is it and that sort of stuff. So my question to you is, do you think there is, in fact there's probably two, one, do you think there is still a stigma associated with the word gig? And the second question is, how would you describe it to somebody that might be listening to this, or a brand that wants to better understand it without them feeling like they're going down that world of murky waters with gig?
Yeah, no, good question. I think highly relevant, as you say, Chris. There's lots of developments, not just in the US, but in other places as well. I suppose what I would start is probably where we should have started back at the beginning of the conversation, which is, what is, Limitless about and doing. And for me, it's simply about accessing the passion of your customer crowd to help other customers. And Gig is an operational enablement of that, i.e. you are tapping into a limitless resource of people on an as needed basis. They can come in and out as they please. You have some quality controls clearly over who it is that's representing you and coming onto our platform to help the brands. But it is just an operational component of what we do. And clearly, we as Limitless have got good mileage out of GigCX as a term. But I think we need to be careful, just because there are some issues associated with the idea of gig. There is certainly stigma around of it in certain groups, and I just think we need to be sensitive to that. If people have that sensitivity themselves and are concerned about it, I think we elevate the conversation to what we're really there to talk about, which is accessing the passion of their customers to drive value in the conversations with other customers, right? And that's what it's really all about. How we get there is, as I've said, by tapping into a highly flexible resource, which is their customers. And we have a platform that enables that. We have a platform that can drive the reward for that and manage the quality control of that. But whether we term it gig or whether we term it flexible resource or whatever it is, that to me is a secondary issue. I just think you're absolutely right. We need to be sensitive to the term, but try and help organizations see the bigger opportunity that exists beyond any potential issue that surrounds the terminology.
Yeah, okay, fair point. Good stuff. So a couple of our last questions as we move into the closing part. So the first one is probably right hopefully in your wheelhouse, which is how would you advise an organisation to look at this? What wisdom would you part on them to say, okay, you've heard about this, everyone's talking about it, it seems to be the buzzword. Where do I start? And obviously talk to Chris, right? Obviously. But if you were giving them some advice, where should I look and why, as a way to move forward?
Yeah, well, my suggestion would be that once they've talked with you, they should get a team on their side that is cross silo and ensure that they are getting visibility of this opportunity as a collection of whether it's departments, divisions, responsibilities, to get their head around the bigger opportunity for what this platform can do. And secondly, they should ask you to line up conversations with our clients. And the advocacy for what we do from the brands that we work with, I think, is hugely powerful. And I've only just recently seen the testimonial from our key contact at Zwift, and I think it's phenomenal. And I think we should put a link in this session if we can, because that sort of advocacy is really important. As I said earlier, we're still a relatively new category. People don't start the year with a budget line that says GigCX, right? We have to work hard to convince them of our value. And when you put that up against standard outsourcing or standard community or standard digital management, whatever it might be, I think that once people shake off any preconceptions and traditional ways of working and think, I need to innovate and I need to look at how I can effectively cut costs, but also improve service levels, how I can attack this workload and resourcing issue, how I can drive brand advocacy and help my marketing colleagues. I think there's a whole load of reasons why they should be engaging, looking at those who have been leading in this field, and they are incredible brands from around the world. They are not niche early adopters. These are really quite significant organizations who are seeing huge benefits. I think that's going to be the biggest tipping point for new organizations wanting to look at this. They should come to you and say, connect me with people that are doing this because I want to learn more.
Well, fair enough. I think the biggest thing I heard in there was this need, as we touched on earlier, to involve others in the wider team, so that it doesn't just end up being a something new and shiny alongside another chatbot or another knowledge forum or something like that, but actually to get more awareness in the other teams, the marketing teams, the digital teams, community teams, even in my opinion, this always needs they don't enter into this world yet with a GigCX budget, maybe next year, but everyone will probably have these sort of strategies, which is how do I do more for less? It sounds a bit cliche, but how do I improve CSAT whilst reducing my cost and that stuff? But you've got this horrible backdrop of, which we touched on at the start, which is this ever increasingly difficult pool of resource to get to work and to get them up to speed in a short amount of time and keep them in a world where the cost pressures are there. Their loyalty is also liquid because they could go to another contact center for 50 cents on the dime for something else, because there's no affiliation with the brand, because you're recruiting basic skills is probably unfair, but it's entry level, right? My first ever job, so I don't mind saying it. There's nothing derogatory in all that. And it's quite tertiary. They come and go, and it makes that really, really difficult. So mainly it was like get involvement with the other teams, because there's probably a very good chance that these sorts of programs affect them as well in a very positive way, and therefore you can get a proper huddle around this and get more support, rather than it being a debate about how you do something in that silo of cost center and CSAT and cost. That's the biggest thing I heard from that. That's great. That's great advice. Cool. And what do you think the future is for GigCX?
Oh, well, I mean, extremely positive. I think that a lot of organizations are having to look at their operating model and how they get more value for money from what they do. They're having to look at cutting costs. They're having to look at technology to take more of a role in managing customers. They, however, still see that there is complexity and challenge in the way that their businesses operate, and they are going to need to have conversations with customers. And I think that GigCX Limitless offers them a really interesting alternative to the traditional. And I think that we're seeing leading brands in the US, in Asia, in Europe adopting Limitless and applying it to their operating model and getting really quite significant success. I think there's more to do and there's more scale to operate at, and many of them are toe dipping and seeing benefits and are then thinking about how they scale. But I think we are, at that tipping point where the organizations involved want to do more, and others will start to look at what they're doing and think, I want a piece of that action. And we're satisfying a real need in the market, and we are delivering a real service to consumers of the brand. And I think that's a powerful combination.
Well, no surprise, I happen to agree. Well, you heard it here first. There we go. Right, you've heard it in stereo. There's some really cool stuff in there, and I think the biggest one for me is just this, like, giving the organizations just like the power to be more, dare I say, honest with their customers. But I, as a consumer, I always see this statement everywhere, which is, we put our customers at the heart of everything we do. And like you just talked about your personal experiences, but then you go through just the issues of trying to move house or update a bill or to make amendments to it or to change your provider or to move, and then all of the problems put in their way. And a lot of them can be eliminated with the right people who can give you the right advice. And there's no better pool of people to represent the brand than the ones that have already chosen to do it. You haven't had to pay them to be they've paid you to be your customer. Now give them another way forward. But anyway, right, I'm on my soapbox, and there we go. Well, it's been fascinating chatting to you, Mike, as always, and it's absolutely brilliant to have you on and always get your perspectives. And
thank you, Chris. Yeah, good to chat to you too, and delighted to be here. Thank you.
And then any more information people want to hear, the best form at the moment is our annual GigCX report. So that's our wonderful piece of content that we put together with advice and interviews from industry leaders, from the experts, from customers, from prospects. We'll bring it all together and offer you that piece of real estate to get more information. So feel free to go to limitlesstech.com, download that. Until the next time, Mike, always a pleasure, and we will see you for episode 9. Take care, Mike.
All the best. Bye now.
Bye-bye.